Picture this. It's your birthday. You wake up, roll over, grab your phone, and boom, 75 notifications. Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, people you haven't seen since 10th grade biology are wishing you a great day. Even your dentist's office sent an automated email. You feel popular, right? Loved, connected. But then you sit there for a second and realize, if you had a flat tire on the side of the highway at 2 a.m., how many of those 75 people could you actually call? 2? Maybe 3?
That is the terrified silence of the modern age, isn't it? It's the paradox we're living in. We are drowning in connection, yet starving for intimacy.
Exactly, and that's what I want to get into today. We throw the word friend around so loosely now. I friended a guy I met in an Uber last week. Is he my friend? Probably not, but the platform says he is. So are we actually building better communities, or have we just turned friendship into a spectator sport?
It's a massive question because it touches on the fundamental architecture of human evolution. We aren't just talking about apps, we're talking about rewiring how we bond. For thousands of years, friendship was a survival mechanism. It was local, it was high stakes, and it was limited. Now, it's infinite low stakes and global, and our brains haven't really caught up.
You mentioned the architecture of evolution, and I know you want to bring up a specific number here. I feel like you can't have this conversation without talking about the famous limit on friendship.
You really can't. You have to look at the work of Robin Dunbar. He's a British anthropologist and evolutionary psychologist who back in the 1990s proposed this concept that became known as Dunbar's number. He studied primates and found a direct correlation between the size of a primate's neocortex, the part of the brain responsible for complex thought and language, and the size of their social groups. When he extrapolated that data to humans, he came up with a number, 150.
150? That's the cap?
Roughly, yes. Dunbar argued that 150 is the cognitive limit to the number of people with whom you can maintain a stable social relationship. And his definition of stable is really interesting. He basically said these are the people you know well enough that if you bumped into them in an airport lounge at 3 a.m., you wouldn't feel awkward saying hello and sitting down for a drink with them. You know who they are and you know how they relate to everyone else in your circle.
Okay, but let's be real. I look at my social media following and it's way over 150. Most people's are. So does social media break Dunbar's number? Do we use technology to hack our own biology?
That's the billion-dollar question. And the short answer, according to most follow-up research, is no. We didn't expand our capacity for friendship. We just expanded our capacity for acquaintances. Dunbar actually revisited his theory in the context of social media recently, around 2016, and found the same limits apply. Even if you have 5,000 followers, the number of people you actually interact with meaningfully, commenting back and forth, private messaging, checking up on, still hovers around that 150 mark. The rest, they're just an audience.
That's a heavy distinction. An audience versus a community. It feels like we've monetized our social lives. We're performing friendship rather than experiencing it. But I want to push back a little bit, because even if those 4,000 extra people are just an audience, isn't there value in that? I've gotten job leads from people I barely know on LinkedIn. I've found out about cool events from loose acquaintances on Twitter. Isn't that a form of friendship, just a new kind?
You are spot on, and you're actually referencing a sociological theory that predates social media but explains it perfectly. It's called the strength of weak ties. It was coined by a sociologist named Mark Granovetter in 1973. He argued that your strong ties, your best friends, your family, are great for emotional support. If you need a kidney, you go to your strong ties. But they usually know the same people you know and have the same information you have. They live in your bubble.
Right, they're an echo chamber.
Exactly. But your weak ties, that guy you met at a conference 3 years ago or your cousin's friend who lives in Tokyo, they are bridges to other worlds. They have access to information, job opportunities, and ideas that you don't. Granovetter found that people rarely found new jobs through close friends. They found them through acquaintances. Social media is the ultimate machine for maintaining weak ties. In the pre-digital era, those weak ties would have just withered and died. You'd lose the address book, or you just wouldn't bother writing a letter. Now, Instagram keeps them on life support forever with a low-effort like.
That's a really useful way to frame it. It's not that social media is destroying friendship, it's that it's supercharging a specific type of relationship, the weak tie. And maybe we're confusing that with the deep stuff. The problem comes when we mistake a weak tie for a strong one. We think because we saw someone's vacation photos, we know how they're doing, but we don't.
Precisely. That confusion creates what researchers call the curated self, or the highlight reel. When you only see the best 1% of someone's life, it creates this psychological distance. You might feel envious or inadequate, which is the opposite of the safety you're supposed to feel in a friendship. But there's another layer to this technical breakdown that I find fascinating, and it's about how the platforms themselves are designed. They aren't neutral public squares. They are engineered to keep you scrolling, not necessarily connecting.
It wants engagement, not intimacy. And this leads to a phenomenon called phubbing. Have you heard this term?
Phubbing, phone snubbing, right?
Yes, it's a portmanteau of phone and snubbing. It's that moment when you're mid-sentence with a friend at a coffee shop, their phone lights up, their eyes dart down, and suddenly you're alone. Studies from the University of Kent and others have actually quantified the damage this does. It's not just annoying, it sends a microsignal of rejection. It tells the other person, whatever's happening in this digital space is more interesting or urgent than you are right now.
And we've all done it. That's the worst part. We're all guilty. It's like we're addicted to the potential of what's on the screen versus the reality of what's in the chair. But why does that little screen win? Is the dopamine hit really that strong?
It is. It's variable reward reinforcement, exactly like a slot machine. A conversation with a friend is slow. It has pauses. It requires patience. It might get boring or awkward. A feed is optimized to never be boring. It's high stimulation versus low stimulation. So we're training our brains to be intolerant of the natural lulls in human interaction, and friendship lives in those lulls. Intimacy happens in the awkward silences, not the high-octane viral clips.
That is profound. Friendship lives in the lulls. If we edit out the boring parts of life, we might be editing out the relationship building blocks too. I want to shift gears a bit to the cultural impact, specifically regarding loneliness. We hear all the time about the loneliness epidemic. The U.S. Surgeon General even released an advisory about it recently. How is it possible that we are the most connected humans in history, yet we feel the most isolated?
It's the difference between being connected and being known. Social media is fantastic for broadcasting. It's terrible for vulnerability. To be known, you have to show the messy parts, the failures, the anxieties, the bad hair days. But social media incentivizes the opposite. It incentivizes performance. So you end up with this hollow feeling where you have 1,000 people watching you, but you feel like none of them actually see you. It creates a specific type of loneliness called displacement.
Displacement?
Basically, time is a zero-sum game. Every hour you spend curating your profile or scrolling through TikTok is an hour you are not spending in face-to-face interaction. We are displacing high-quality physical time with low-quality digital time. There was a study published in the American Journal of Preventive Medicine that found people who visited social media platforms more than 58 times a week were 3 times more likely to feel socially isolated than those who visited fewer than 9 times.
Wow, so the heavy users are statistically the loneliest. That's a vicious cycle because when you're lonely, you turn to the phone for comfort, which makes you lonelier.
And it gets weirder when you look at parasocial relationships. This is a term that used to apply to people obsessed with Elvis or the Beatles, but now it applies to regular people and influencers. You watch a YouTuber every day. You know their dog's name, their coffee order, their interior design choices. You feel like they are your friend, but they don't know you exist. This isn't just a quirky internet thing. It's replacing real social nutrition with empty calories. You feel the warmth of companionship without the reciprocity.
It's like emotional junk food. Takes away the hunger pangs, but doesn't nourish you. But Rachel, I have to play devil's advocate here. We've been painting a pretty grim picture. Isolation, performance, fake friends. But I have a friend who's deeply introverted, bordering on agoraphobic. He found a community of people who restore vintage watches on Reddit. He talks to them every day. He feels understood in a way he never did in his high school. For him, social media saved his social life. We have to acknowledge the nuance there, right?
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you brought that up because I don't want to be a total Luddite about this. For marginalized communities, for people with niche interests, or for people who are physically isolated, maybe they live in a rural area or have a disability that makes travel hard, social media is a lifeline. It destroys geography. If you were a kid growing up in a small town in the 1980s and you were, say, the only gay kid in your school, you were truly alone. Today, you can find a community of millions instantly. That is undeniably a miracle of the modern age.
So it destroys geography, but maybe it also dilutes presence. It seems like the tool is neutral, but the usage is where we get into trouble. It's about intentionality.
Intentionality is the key word. The research shows that how you use the platforms matters more than if you use them. Passive consumption, scrolling without interacting, is linked to depression and envy. But active usage, messaging a specific friend, commenting to offer support, using the app to organize a real-life meetup, that is actually linked to higher well-being. If you use Facebook to facilitate a barbecue, that's a win. If you use Facebook to spy on your ex and compare your life to your high school valedictorian, that's a loss.
It's the difference between using the phone as a tool versus using it as a destination. I used to call my friends to make a plan. Now the phone is the plan. We hang out on the phone. I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier about conflict. You said friendship lives in the messy parts. Do you think social media has made us worse at conflict resolution?
Oh, 100%. It has made us conflict avoidant and prone to ghosting. In the past, if you had a problem with a friend in your village or your neighborhood, you couldn't just vanish. You'd run into them at the grocery store or church. You were forced to navigate the friction. That friction teaches you emotional intelligence. It teaches you forgiveness. Today, if things get awkward, you just mute them. You unfollow. You ghost. We treat people like disposable content. If the content isn't pleasing us, we swipe left. But long-term friendship requires staying through the boring seasons and the difficult seasons.
That idea of disposable people is terrifying. It's the commodification of relationships. We're shopping for friends on an endless shelf.
And the metrics reinforce that. We literally assign numerical value to people. How many likes did they give me? What's their follower count? It subtly trains us to value people based on their digital social capital rather than their character. I remember reading a piece by Sherry Turkle, a professor at MIT, who wrote Alone Together. She talks about how we expect more from technology and less from each other. We want friendship to be friction-free. We want to be able to edit our messages before we send them, so we always sound smart. Real-time conversation is risky. You might stutter. You might say the wrong thing. But that risk is where trust is built.
Because if I can edit my personality, you're not bonding with me, you're bonding with my PR representative.
Exactly. You're bonding with my avatar, and avatars don't need comfort when they cry.
So where do we go from here? We can't put the genie back in the bottle. Social media isn't going away. Dunbar's number is still 150. Our brains are still Stone Age hardware running Silicon Valley software. How do we reclaim friendship in this environment without deleting all our accounts and moving to a cabin in the woods?
We have to become aggressive curators of our own attention. First, acknowledge the distinction between strong ties and weak ties. Keep the weak ties on the apps. That's what they are for. But for the strong ties, your top 5 or 10 people, move them off the platform. Don't wish them happy birthday on their timeline. Call them. Text them directly. Create a private group chat. Insist on voice notes or FaceTime if you can't see them in person.
I like the voice note rule. Hearing a voice carries so much more nuance than reading Helvetica font on a white background.
It carries tone, it carries hesitation, it carries warmth. Text is information, voice is emotion. Secondly, we need to enforce phubbing-free zones. If we are having dinner,
The phones are away, not face down on the table, because even the presence of a phone on the table has been shown to reduce the depth of conversation, but in a bag, in a pocket, away. We have to signal to our friends, you are the most important thing in this room.
That's a hard rule to follow, but it pays off immediately. You feel the difference in the energy of the conversation.
And finally, we need to normalize being boring. Post the bad photo, share the mundane thought, or better yet, don't post it at all. Share it with one person. If you see a beautiful sunset, instead of broadcasting it to 500 people for validation, send it to your best friend and say, wish you were here. That intimacy is built in the one-to-one, not the one-to-many.
It's shifting from broadcasting to narrowcasting. I think there's also something to be said for the grace of missing out. We talk about FOMO, but there's JOMO, the joy of missing out. Being okay with not knowing what everyone is doing every second allows you to actually be present where you are.
Yes, and realizing that the feed is not reality. It's a magazine. You wouldn't look at a Vogue magazine and think, why isn't my life like this? You know it's a production. We need to treat Instagram with the same skepticism we treat a fashion magazine. It's entertainment, not a documentary of our friends' lives.
This conversation has really made me rethink my own habits. It's funny, we think of technology as this cold, hard thing, but ultimately the solution to the problems it creates is incredibly soft and human. It's eye contact. It's listening. It's showing up.
Technology changes, but human needs don't. We still need to be seen, we still need to be held, and we still need to know that someone has our back when the tire goes flat at 2 a.m. No app can fix a flat tire, and no amount of likes can hold your hand in a hospital waiting room. We have to invest in the people who will do those things.
That's the takeaway right there. Use the app to find the people, but get off the app to keep them. Rachel, this has been an illuminating deep dive. Thank you for helping us untangle the wires.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And to everyone listening, here is my challenge to you today. Don't just like this episode, send it to one specific friend, a real friend, and ask them, hey, when can we grab coffee and leave our phones in the car? We'll see you next time.